The world is saved. The living room's dark save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the once starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how goes it?
Falcon Punch!
Ah! KO!
I have literally, like, that might have been, like, the first thing I wrote into my notes. And you would not believe my crushing disappointment when I realized Captain Falcon is mentioned nowhere in this game. Not at all.
No, I was also very disappointed with that because I mean I'll be blatantly honest and let's just shoulder right into it. My nostalgia experience for this is none. I never played this game. I did not even know that this game existed until Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden I'm like who dat? And somebody was like that's Captain Falcon. And I mean aside from just schooling people that I, obviously know in classic Smash Brothers because I am the best that there ever was or ever will be.
As every straight white guy is at fighting games, yes.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, aside from that, I did not even know that this game was a thing. And so then when you were like, oh, we should play F-Zero, I'm like, yeah, that'll be good because that'll round out my nerd cred because I've got my nerd cred is sometimes a little bit like Swiss cheese where there are these like weird holes in it when all of a sudden it's like you've never seen West Side Story and it's like dude, shut up, so aside from announcing it publicly to all of our listeners, this will finally shore that up for me so I can pretend that I've always played it.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing about F-Zero. I wanted to play this because I had those cloudy memories that I've had some other times where I'm like, I have such clear memories of the game and not any of the context. I don't remember if I played this at Brian's. I don't remember if I played this with my brother. I don't remember if this was a rental. I just know that I played this game a bunch, and I know I played it a lot as a young kid and not like as an older teenager, and certainly not later into college. So like the fact that this is even present in my like library of classic games is a testament to it being inceptioned into my brain.
Yep.
And like,
yep.
There's two important things. First, I'll do the details for the audience. So F-Zero Super Nintendo game came out in 1991. And if you've ever played any other Super Nintendo kart racing games, like say Mario Kart, you will note that this came out first. And they obviously learned a bunch of valuable lessons when making Mario Kart. We'll get into all of that.
Yep.
Yeah. But the other thing is, I sat down to play this game and I was like, racing game. I'm gonna make sure I do some co-op with this. Like I'm gonna be a good podcaster. I'm gonna get the full experience. How the hell do you play this with another person? So like I plugged in the second controller. Because sometimes like it only shows you the menu if there's actually two controllers plugged in. So like I'm trying everything, and finally I was like, I guess I gotta look it up. And so I looked it up, and the original F-Zero only single player. But F-Zero 2, which only came out in Japan, was 2-player. But F-Zero X on the N64 was 4-player. And what I want to know is, why didn't they keep this trend going? I think there should be like an 8th entry that is like 512 players.
Interesting. No,
actually, I guess it'd be 256.
Yeah, and actually that would be doable now.
Totally.
Actually, I mean, if you did, if you had it on like the Switch, like you could totally have it just networked and everybody from around the world. It's like 216 players. I mean, the wait time may be a little bit much to get that kind of a player match, and I don't know about their servers groaning under the weight of 216 players all moving at 400 kilometers per hour. Was that? I think it was.
Yeah, I believe
it was in kph.
Yeah, kilometers per hour. And this would be, this is I think this was an Atlas game. I don't remember. Publishers don't really matter to me that much unless they're good or I remembered to look at them. This would be an excellent time in history.
They don't matter unless they do.
Yeah, exactly. This would be an excellent time in history for them to release a refreshed version of F-Zero for the Super Nintendo, but with 256 simultaneous racers, because like the battle royale games like Fortnite and PUBG, like those are all the rage, so they should totally jump on that bandwagon. It's definitely not too late.
Oh yeah, no, that game industry is definitely not saturated. There's new exciting content coming out every day.
Yeah, lots to do. Still lots to do.
Oh yeah. but yeah, but this game for the SNES, top of the hour visuals, what you got?
So this game, one of the few things we do that I would say even crests the concept into research is I do in the show notes, if anybody ever looks, and you should, because there's a link to our Patreon in there. But if you ever look in the show notes, the one thing I always include, just in case someone is listening to this episode that has never played this game before, I do put a link to the Wikipedia article about that game, because that's the closest you can get on the internet to like neutral, unbiased information about a video game, right? It's not a let's play. It's not someone else's review. It's just like, here are the raw facts about this game. And so when I was grabbing the Wikipedia link for F-Zero, I couldn't help but read a couple sentences, and one of them was one of the first games to use Mode 7 on the Super Nintendo. And I was like, no, like, as if I needed to be told that this is one of the first games to use that janky way of scaling graphics.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, and whoa, buddy, does it show, you know? I mean, like, to the point where a couple of times, so literally, I'm just going to come clean just at the very beginning. I don't know whether, like, what was going on in my life this week, but this game, I will fully admit that I was biased in my approach to it, because this game just rubbed me right the wrong way right from the beginning, like to the point where I really desperately at one point like sat myself down, like kids were asleep, wife was doing something else, and I was like, I'm going to play this game, because I had become so enraged by it by so many like several times. And again, like normally I've said that about a game before, you know, where I was just kind of like, this game like was upsetting, deeply so, but in this one I could tell like that it was just, I don't know what the issue was, but like I was just angry, and man, the graphics. Literally, one of my top notes is not. It does not service gameplay, right? Like, so you know, like the Mode 7 is so. The way that they attack it is so visually disorienting that it does actively make it difficult to run the course. It does,
and you can. I think they made a very wise decision in making the courses largely just empty tracks. It's not until the end of the later cups, whatever. It's like Knight, Queen, King. So it's not until the end of like the King Cup that you are dealing with like crap on the course consistently. And thank God, because everything is just whizzing around so awkwardly and it's so pixelated and janky. Like all of the information is communicated to you through colors, which woe behold you if you are colorblind or have like visual acuity issues, because nothing is recognizable
or epilepsy.
Oh God. Nothing is recognizable by shape, because it's moving so quickly. It's hard to discern the shape. Like if you're not moving, everything has a clearly defined shape. But if you're moving, and it's a racing game, right? So it's like nothing is clearly distinguishable by shape, and nothing is clearly distinguishable by placement until you've learned like, oh, ramps are usually here.
Yes.
Boundaries are usually, or the like rough patch that slows you down is usually out on toward the outside, right? But there are obstacles later in the game, and the only reason you can tell that they're there is because they're like flashing neon colors. So if you have any problems with colors, like, I don't know, this game might be unplayable.
Well, and to me, where it kind of comes down to is that, so first of all, two things we have to talk about is and visuals does play into this, is that, you know, there's plan, practice, improvise gameplay, right? Where it's just kind of like, there's gameplay where like you can look at a situation like, you know, Magic, right? Where you can kind of look at a situation and you can plan what it is that you're going to do, right? You know, chess is a plan game, right?
And
then there's
what do you call that? It's total information.
Right, where you have all of the information, exactly. So you have all the information that you need in order to make an informed decision, right? And then there's practice gameplay where you don't have all the information that you need. You have to memorize, right, and learn from that. And then improvise is kind of a mix of the two, where you have enough information to make an informed choice, but you're going to have to probably switch up your strategy some of the way through, because you'll be given new information that will make you be allowed to be making new decisions. For example, like Civilization.
Or like most sports. Right? Like you may have a strategy in mind, but then like a player moves in an unexpected way, or they fall down, or like you miss your shot. Exactly. You have to grab the rebound or something.
Yeah. Great examples. And I am by no means an expert on these. But that being said, is I went into this assuming that this would be improvised gameplay, and it is practice gameplay. And the visuals 100% are that. I mean, that's the thing, is that the visuals don't don't give you enough information because of how kind of, like you said, janky the mode 7 is, and how quickly stuff's whizzing at you, to where like you can see a thing. Chances are that if the course is going to do something, unless it's, you know, like I'd say about 30% of the time, I was able to just like compensate on the fly. The other 70% of the time, I tapped a wall, which was fine because then I was able to get back on course, you know. But I did tap the wall, and you take damage from that, which we'll get into later. but I mean, so that's the thing, is that, you know, like it is definitely you have to memorize the courses, and the visuals don't prevent that, which is fine if that's what the developer was intending. But I'm not sure that all the mechanics that they chose are in service of that. So that was kind of weird.
Well, I was explaining this game to someone else, and I used the term kart racer like totally without thinking about it. Like they were like, "Oh, what is it?" And I was like, "Oh, it's like an early Super Nintendo kart racer." And then I kind of paused and I was like, "Wait a minute. Why do I think that?" And then the more I played it, the more I was like, "Oh, because all of its visual and mechanical and control scheme choices are all way more in line with a Mario Kart than a Gran Turismo." And
absolutely,
that's not like a bad thing, but specifically to your point about like the practice gameplay where you just have to memorize the courses, they do technically give you that information where on the bottom of the screen you can see the layout of the course, but you can't reference it during the race. Like there's way too much crap going on, and there's the courses start out like a little more complex than a real racetrack would be, and then they just get overwhelmingly nutcase complex to where sometimes like there's even dead ends that I don't know what the point of these dead ends are, because you can't jump, and there's like you don't get to choose where there's ramps, so it's like that dead end is literally just there to confuse you because you are coming on a straightaway and you need to make a right angle turn, like literally a hard left or a hard right. But it looks, if you're not paying attention, like you could continue to go straight. And if you do, you just smash into the wall at 600 kilometers an hour. So they're really, really expecting you and designed the game with the idea that you would have to memorize, oh, this is the course that has that dead end. Or you look at the little track map right before you start and use it to jog your memory. And you're like, yes, this is the course that has that dead end. I need to make sure I don't crash into the wall at speeds that will liquefy my organs.
If they're calling it Batman vs. Superman, they should have called it Batman vs. Superman, the punch from space that liquefied Batman's internal organ.
God, I would have bought the Blu-ray extended edition of that.
I would have, even if it was, I mean, because I would have, because I didn't buy Batman v Superman, I would have definitely bought it if it was a 3-minute movie that was just Superman flying down from space, then punching Batman, and then it just went straight to credits. I would have paid full price for that movie.
Especially with the Hans Zimmer soundtrack. Sign me up.
And so with that extension, I would say that, and this is kind of touches on what we've been kind of talking about, which is there are very few visual affordances in this game, right? So Because I think comparing it to Mario Kart is a best way to juxtapose it, right? And now Mario has a number of things going for it that this game just would not, which is that the franchise itself is well known, so like question mark boxes, that you want to go hit those, so you can leverage those affordances visually more so than this game could, which would have to create like basically its entirely own IP. That being said, though, is that most of the things that were going on, I had to approach with like the scientific method. Like it was not intuitive to me what was happening. For example, the whatever that stroke-inducing clear or blue line area is on like World 1 Map 2. I don't know. I think it's ice.
Oh,
it makes your car
it's
act like it's on
yes,
ice.
But because of the way the game engine presents the visual to you, it makes you feel like you're on acid.
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, I was just kind of like, oh, weird blue track area, and then I just tried to, hammer right, and then just slammed into a wall. I'm like, oh, I guess that's ice or equivalent. So
slippery surface.
Note to self, that is slipperier than normal slippery, right? And so
is this a good time to point out that these are all hovercrafts and the surface should be as close to irrelevant as anything could possibly be?
Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that is very true. My thought was that, and that I was loath to mention it because I was like, well, this could be theoretically defensible, is that it's not ice, it's some electromagnetic interference that prevents your hovercraft from gripping the ground.
And so this is something that the visuals do, to your point, is they can't rely on things like, oh, this is a question mark block and roughly what that does, right? But they do have other affordances, like you roughly get that this is a car-like vehicle that is driving on a track-like surface, and that different like textures or consistencies or whatever of the track will impact your driving, even if those don't totally make sense. Like a rough patch, it's like, oh, well, over there, it's rough and it slows you down. It's like hovercraft.
Yeah. Hovercraft.
But they need a good way to communicate that information with the fidelity that was available to them and with the speed that you need to process that information. So I get it and I'll forgive it, but as an adult, part of me is just like, hovercraft.
This shouldn't be a problem. It's a problem for me. The other visual affordance that I got frustrated to the point where I was like, there has to be an in-game solution to this. And then that's what led me to what the solution was. And I do try to, because obviously this podcast has helped me as a player, because I'm like, it helps you think like a designer, right? So there have been times when I try to check whenever I'm like, a good designer would not do this, to like mentally think like, I did have to think that way though. It didn't just happen, which was about the third or fourth time I made one too many mistakes and exploded in a heap on the side of the road because my power was out, which I didn't really care for that. Like I didn't care for it being called power. Like I would have preferred like ship integrity, or I mean, I know that's like wordy, but and
power. Anytime there's a weird word choice,
shield would
have been excellent. And even just like hull, right? Like, but anytime there's a weird word choice, there's always a part of me that's like, are we seeing the best word, or are we seeing a terrible translation? Yeah. And especially in a case like a HUD, because Japanese is a way denser language than English. So if you only have 5 or 6 characters, but they're Japanese characters, you can convey volumes more information than you can in it.
That's like a friggin' poem,
I mean, it really is. So it's one of those things where I agree with you that we didn't play the Japanese version. We don't speak or read Japanese, so we had to deal with the word power. Well, I mean,
do you not?
I mean, just Mandarin and Korean. I'm working on Japanese. Get cultured, you pig. So
you uncultured little piggy.
But so we didn't play that. We're not dealing with that, and that's an assumption. I don't even know that that's true. Maybe it just says power in Japanese. Maybe they even wrote the English up there because Japanese media does that sometimes. But what we dealt with was the English word power, and that does not immediately tell you when this is depleted, you die.
No, it doesn't. And in fact, what I thought was like power, I thought boost,
Boost,
like
fuel.
engine.
I mean, it is a car.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I was like power. So I was like, oh, so that should be a thing where I should be able to hit a button and then I will consume power to produce work because I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm no physicist, but I think that holds up.
That is close. Yes, I don't want to bore you with the math, but let's say your reductive simplification is sufficient.
Okay, so we got to go through this quick tangent because I'm going to be sick with rage if we don't. Which was we both went to college together, right? And I majored in chemistry, which took me all the way up to Calc 3, and you majored in information technology, which took you through statistics, right?
Stat and pre-calc.
Stat and pre-calc, right? And so at one point I was lamenting the fact that I was in Spanish 2 or something like that and how difficult this class was and that language wasn't my thing, but I had to do it to fulfill my language requirement. And then you smugly turned to me and said, yeah, I don't have to take a language requirement. And I said, why? And you were like, well, I'm taking stat. And I was like, excuse me? You're like, well, for my major, I'm considered to speak the language of math. And I was so agog and blind with rage that I don't think I was able to adequately respond to you at the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, like 14 years later, you're still carrying this chip on your shoulder for one. For another thing, I'm amazed that it took 49 episodes for this story to come out because we've talked about math and language more than once. And 3, just for my own defense, I want to make it clear that I did not agree with the university's assessment of me being fluent in the language of math compared to someone who had far more math than me. I was just benefiting from their stupidity.
Right, which is fair. But all that being said, that's what I figured that particular health bar was going to do. But it said it's structural integrity. Fine, I'll take a deep breath. Let's all move past it. So then apparently there is another seizure-inducing strip to the left of the start line, which you can use to replenish your health, right? Nothing about the visuals that happen the first time you go across that, because the first time you see that, okay, so you're at the start line. The first time you see that, right, is you're taking off, you've got full health, right? So the first thing I did was I saw something I could interact with, and it didn't look, terrible or awful. So I'm like, oh, let me do that. And a unidentified flying object hovered above me and started to beam me up, which was kind of aggressive. I didn't care for that. I'm sitting there, I'm in my underwear, I'm playing this video game, and I don't like it when the aliens are trying to get me. So I was like, I don't know what that does, but I know it didn't. And here's the problem: is I didn't know what it did. I knew it didn't do anything good. Because nothing good happened,
you already had full health.
Because I already had full health. And it wasn't until I had taken so much damage. I'm like, there are no power drops. There's nothing like that. There's got to be something. Oh, it's that dumb UFO, isn't it? And then the second time, the 15th time I was running, but on the second lap after I'd taken some damage, I went over there and I got some power back. And I was like, got it.
So this is... Oh man, I'm having feelings right now, like design feelings, because first off, I know generally speaking, we try to only play games that both of us have played, but life is a thing that exists and we can't always do it. And sometimes we don't do it on purpose. As soon as you said there's this crazy colored strip right next to the starting line, I was like, yeah, why would you know what that does? And then here's my answer to that question. But before I answer that, even if you had a good feeling that you knew what it did, the visual after you go on it of a UFO shooting you with lasers does not necessarily go with your gut instinct that oh, maybe this is a helpful area. Here is my...
Because there are no allies. Real fast. There's no allies, right? You are alone in the universe,
you
right? Every other thing moving is out to get you and Falcon punch you to death, as you will find out later in the series.
Yes.
So naturally, I assumed I'm like, there's another ship. It's probably doing something bad to me.
Yeah. Here's the one thing that I will say I am almost positive they're doing intentionally. The reason there aren't health drops on the course like you would see in like a Mario Kart or another like kart style racing game is that power up area is the futuristic version of the pit in NASCAR.
Yes.
And I'm positive that did not ever occur to me as a kid. But on this playthrough, I was like, God, this is so stupid. Why do they do it this way? Oh, it's like the pit. Which is why it's off to the side of the course. Oh. But the thing is, even if you knew about racing, but you don't know about this game, you go over into the pit for that very first time and you start getting shot by lasers from a UFO. And that does not line up with your conjecture. Your conjecture is, oh, it's like the pit. And then you get shot by lasers. Like, so even that, like they were using a racing metaphor, but then the visual is kind of counterproductive.
Well, and even if, because I mean, I'm confident that they could have accomplished this. You know, like there are some visual affordances they could have given you. I mean, first of all, let's just kibosh the UFO off the top, right? That's not great. But like if they had like little like up arrows, you know, like by your car, because you're looking at your car, right? So if they put like up arrows or like little pluses or, you know, like the word, you know, shield or power, and then like a little like recycling thing flashing, like anything to say like, hey, this is it's a good thing, and it is doing something like positive. You know,
all of those would have been within the realm not just of the Super Nintendo hardware's capabilities, but also the design sensibility of the time. Like nothing about what you just described was discovered in the early 2000s of, you know, video game design. Like that was all stuff that existed at this time.
Yeah. So that was something. And again, you know, like I said, by the time I had gotten around to stress testing doing the scientific method, forming a hypothesis, testing my hypothesis, and coming up with a, you know, theory, right? Like I was already relatively frustrated. So, you know, again, I just don't really feel. So for me personally, for the visuals, in service of gameplay, now, put a pin in that. Visuals for visual sake, I actually kind of enjoyed. I thought that all the courses were like they switched it up. You know, they weren't quite as endearing as the like Mario Karts were. You know, like they didn't really. It didn't feel immersive because you're on this track and like basically the background changes. You know,
the horizon is variable and nicely done, but the world immediately outside of the track, like right on the other side of the boundary, is shifting so fast because of the mode 7 that it's usually just a muddy mess, and sometimes is literally a muddy mess where it is just a mass of colors. So even if you're sitting still, there is a mass of moving colors, and then when you're moving quickly, it's a disorienting mass of moving colors.
Right. So, I mean, you know, like I didn't, you know, credit where credit's due. I think that, you know, they did try to vary it up to be like, oh, now you're on a beach and now you're on like now you're in a desert. And it's like, yeah, it's all great, but it feels like I'm on a racetrack with a TV in the background of a desert, as opposed to like in Mario Kart, where you really feel like you are in Bowser's dungeon, you know, because you're able to interact with the dungeon, you know, to some capacity. And the actual dungeon itself varies up, you know, like for example, in 64, you know, there are thwomps, you know, and those can mess with you. You know, there's pieces of the with Boo's castle, you know, like where there are boos that, you know, like you can see moving through the background and stuff like that. It really feels like you're a part of it, as opposed to this, where it just feels like that you've been magically teleported to this insane track and it's just on a new backdrop.
Did you ever see the live action movie version of Speed Racer?
I love that movie.
Right?
Yeah, no. Oh man. And the thing is that I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm really, oh man, that's one we should do. Oh, it's not a video game. We should just rewatch that at some point.
You and I can just watch that movie.
Yeah, because like, God, I loved that movie when it came out. I thought it was a really faithful adaptation to the wacky hijinks of, you know, the cartoon. But anyways, what were you going to say?
The reason I mention it is because in the cartoon, all of the racetracks were, you know, racetracks. Like they were going at absurd speeds and crazy things happened and all the cars had like weapons and tools and stuff. And like, that's all true. But in the movie, the racetracks are all even more fantastical and usually just floating kind of out in like they're quantum locked hundreds of meters off the ground. And the reason that matters is because several of the races happen in like an incredibly scenic place where everything is like really beautiful. But from the driver's point of view, that must all be so far off in the distance that it just looks like a matte painting. Whereas if you were driving in Monaco, or, you know, if you're running the London Marathon versus the Boston Marathon, like, you can tell because you're like down in the city. Whereas like a lot of these courses are in like futuristic cities, but they're not. They're like in the suburbs where people act like they live in the city, but really they're like 100 miles outside of the town. Like, that's where all of these racetracks are. They went out to where they could buy the land cheap. They built a racetrack and they were like, oh, it's right there in LA. And it's like, no, it's not even close. It's like out in the ocean off the coast of California. And LA is just visible barely on the horizon. And that does create like a weird amount of separation.
Yeah. So anyways, those are my notes on visuals. Do you have anything else?
I do have this one other thing, and I'm surprised you didn't bring this up, but the HUD, it omits a piece of information that I personally think is non-negotiable, and it includes a piece of information that I think is useless. So whenever you are playing a racing game, I presume the object is to do your best, and your best, if at all possible, is to take first by the biggest lead you can, right? Like, because you don't want to just take first place. You want to make sure that you can't possibly make a mistake and slip into second, right? So you want to take first with the biggest possible lead. So one of the things you would need to know is your position, right? But then you would also need to know what lap you're on out of laps total, because if I'm in third place and I want to be in first place, how much time do I have to close that gap and then create a gap of my own?
If John is driving at 55 miles an hour and starts at time 0, and then Susie starts driving,
that to me is racing information I need. Where am I? How long until the race is over, measured in laps, right? And this game tells you what lap you're on as you complete a lap, and then that information goes away forever, and it's just not on the screen anymore. It's not on the pause menu. It's nowhere. You do not know what lap you're on, and these are all 5-lap races, so you can actually forget which lap you're on. And like some other, I feel bad continually referencing Mario Kart, but like Mario Kart had a pretty clever way of handling this, which is the information is displayed on the HUD, and when you're on the final lap, the music is faster. So even if you don't have the wherewithal to like look at the HUD in your peripheral vision on your giant 12-inch television, you still know that you're on at least the final lap because the music is faster. This game does nothing to communicate what lap you are currently on except right when that counter increments by 1. And that to me is unacceptable. It is additionally unacceptable in light of the fact that they tell you the place you need to finish in to proceed to the next race. Like, tell me if I covered that bet after the race. But instead, in the top corner where the lap counter should be, it says like safe 5. And that means if you take 5th place or above, you will get to go on to the next race and you won't have to retry this race. That's not like when I'm driving the car, that is not the most prevalent piece of information for me. Like, that is something you tell me after the race is finished.
And here's the fun thing is there's 2 reasons why I didn't point this out. One, let me phrase it, why I didn't think of it. Because it's not like I had this like locked and loaded. No, I didn't think of it for 2 reasons. One is, and we'll get into this mechanics, is the rubber band physics with this are so strong that I didn't really feel I had any agency, so I didn't really care what lap I was on. But 2, the reason why I didn't mention the extraneous information is because I actually had no idea what that
had
meant.
To look it up.
Yep. Yeah, when it was like 10 safe, 5 safe, I'm like, cool. What? I don't know.
No, I
no idea what that meant.
I was trying to puzzle it out like organically, and I couldn't do it. And I was like, I'm not going to just play hundreds of races to try and discern the meaning of this one value. So I had to look it up on GameFAQs. I was like, this is the caliber of design in this HUD that I'm dealing with, is I have to ask people to reach back into their memories and be like, you remember when you played this game as a 10-year-old? What the hell did this mean?
And they're like, yes, well, it means that you're safe to move on to the next race. You're like, was that not an option? I don't know. But actually, though, to like you said, like Mario did the great thing of in addition to having the visual on the HUD, having the music speed up as you went through. So speaking of music,
well done.
No, I'm disproportionately proud of myself.
It's the best audio related thing you've done in the entire show.
Oh, by far. Like, not even.
So the problem with the audio in this game is if I played this more regularly, I think I would probably have committed some of these tunes to memory, because they're actually pretty good little chiptune songs. Like, it's a very futuristic sci-fi kind of visual world, and the audio slots right in. Like, it all feels pretty cohesive, and they're pretty catchy little numbers. But I didn't play the game enough as a kid or now as an adult to say like, oh, I could hum a bunch of these tunes for you, right? When I hear it, I'm immediately like, oh yeah, yes, okay, I recognize this piece of music, which I think is a step in the right direction, right? That's a step toward hummability. The notable exception, and the thing that is throwing a major wrench into my ability to talk about the music in this game, is Captain Falcon is in Smash Brothers, and there are F-Zero like battle arenas, and they use the Mute City music. And that's pretty deeply baked into my memory from years of playing Smash Brothers. So I can't honestly say if I remembered that tune on its own merit. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering right the Smash Brothers Melee version.
Yeah, you've been in step.
Yeah. So but it's a good tune. Like, I get why they chose that one specifically. First off, it's the first piece of music you hear in the game, but it's like, I get why they picked that one to be the one they used on the stage in Smash Brothers, because like it's a good piece of music. Like, it's legitimate.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And actually, I did really like when I was driving around, the courses, I did feel that the music was very enjoyable. It was different for at least all of the courses that I did. And the music was genuinely enjoyable. Like, I enjoyed listening to it. It didn't have anything that was like pitchy or like, when I was listening to it, I was just kind of like, wow, I wish that this would end. Like noises or anything like that. The sound effects I thought were also relatively good. I thought that, with both the visual and the sound effects, like when you are doing something wrong, it lets you know both with a visual and like through audio. Like it changes basically the sound of the engine, so
yeah, the kind of goes to more like a noise is very satisfying.
Yeah, that kind of like, I don't want to do it, but like that zooming, like that all of the sound effects are very the sound effects are appropriate. Like, so the ones that are supposed to be satisfying, like moving at tremendous speeds, those are satisfying. And the ones that are not supposed to be satisfying, like slamming into another vehicle, those are not satisfying, and they shouldn't be. Like, one of the things that I actually noticed recently is my son and I have been playing Lego Harry Potter, right?
Nice.
Yeah, no, it was, I was like, what's a good game that would be a good good for his literacy level, right? And one of the things I noticed is that I went with the Harry Potter one because originally I got like the new Batman one, and I realized that they have realized that their marketing audience is not people with low literacy anymore, because they've made those games way more complicated. Right. So, but the Harry Potter ones, this was back when like it is age appropriate for Teddy. But one of the things I've noticed that's interesting is sound effects and visuals can absolutely, if they feel good, incentivize poor behavior. For example, jumping off the side of a cliff in those Lego games causes you to explode with pips, which if you don't know or have the concept of numbers, right, and you don't see the numbers go down, you're like, look at all of these additional pips for me to pick up. And the fact that it like makes this like little satisfying scatter of pips like noise, and it's like, dude, he kills himself and laughs and just thinks it is just the best thing ever. And I'm like, dude, and I'm just perpetually like running around desperately trying to pick up all of the pips that he's dropped. And he's just like, ha, 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 and just jumps to his death again. So I told you all that to tell you this, which is you really want things that shouldn't be happening to not have a satisfying visual or sound effect. And this game does accomplish that.
Yeah. And in Harry Potter, they are trying to make something as gruesome as falling off a cliff and dying non-threatening and non-violent. Like, hey, you just lost some pips. You can totally keep playing, right? Whereas in F-Zero, it's a much more mature aesthetic, right? They're not catering to people who are afraid to see like an explosion because like you explode when you run out of power, and it makes it's one of the few, I actually put this in my notes, it is one of the only bassy sound effects. And it's not because the other sound effects are like too trebly and grating. They actually do an amazing job of doing lots of swooshy noises that are not like ear poison. But the engine noise and the explosion noise, one of which is very good and the other of which is very bad, are two of the only like bassy sound effects in the game. And the explosion noise is really like, it's a satisfying noise in that it is well executed. But when you see your car go away and you hear the like, and then the camera pans around and there's literally a smoking crater where your car used to be, like, that communicates information pretty clearly. It is really obvious to you, even if you can't read the words on the screen, you know, you died, try again kind of thing. It is really obvious to you, like, oh, I'm no longer racing. Like that is a bad sound effect because I'm here to race. And when I heard the boom noise, the racing stopped, right? So it communicates information in a satisfying way without incentivizing it.
Right. And I would agree with that. And I think that all the other sound effects kind of fall in line with that. Honestly, that's kind of what I had for audio, which is, you know, the music's very satisfying. The sound effects are very appropriate. I think that honestly, as far as sound goes, the game is very solid.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think especially in contrast to the visuals, because there's so many places, because of they were trying to do something really new, right? Like Mode 7 and this idea of like the car doesn't actually move, the world moves around the car, like all of that was it's Farnsworth's engine.
Oh
no, we had this exact discussion when we played Mario Kart, because
well, I feel just as creative as when we had it the first time.
I mean it is Farnsworth engine, because this is an amazing technical leap, right? Is someone realized, oh, we can spin the entire world in a way that makes it look like you are moving through this massive space when technically speaking, the car is not moving at all, right? It orients itself. It it looks like it's turning one way or the other, but the world is moving around the car. And this goes way back in the old days of arcade racing games, but on this kind of hardware to do it with the Mode 7 was very interesting. And when you contrast how poorly that has aged to how very well the when you hit the wall and it makes the electric like shield, it should be a shield noise, not a power noise, but it makes the you took damage noise. And when you explode, and the hum of the engine never gets grating, right? Like, especially because when you let off the gas, when you let off the plasma, I don't know what it is, when you let off the accelerator and then you hit it again, it doesn't immediately go back to humming. It actually makes like a little like afterburner like pop noise, just like an engine would sound when it's firing up, like a jet engine makes that like, and it like it's not only a good attention to
reignite.
Yeah, it's not only, thank you, reignite. Jesus Christ. Not only is that excellent attention to detail, but it feels good. Like you feel satisfied when you like let off the accelerator to make a tight turn, and then you like fire the engines again. You're like, and you take off. So it's like those sound effects held up incredibly well, and even more so in contrast to the janky pixel mess that is the background of all of the courses.
Yes, agreed. Gameplay in controls?
Yeah, and I do have a specific control story, which I feel like coincidentally has been happening a lot recently, but depending on the order people listen to these episodes in, maybe it's not happening a lot from their point of view.
Maybe it's about to happen a lot.
Ooh,
Whoa!
So So that's the Farnsworth engine, but with time. So this hardware, it ages, right? The games are solid state, but all things suffer the inexorable march of time.
As well put, Ozymandias.
Exactly. So I sat down to play this, the very first session of this playthrough, and I'm not exaggerating. 5 seconds into the first course, I was like, oh my God, these are the worst controls I've ever seen in my life. Like, I'm crashing into other cars. I'm crashing into walls. I'm like, I actually played through the first race and then put the controller down and was like, there's no freaking way my concept of this game, like in my memory, is this far divorced from the actual reality. This cannot be true, to where I actually went and got one of my other controllers, because this controller is like it's the colorful one. So it's the one I use most often because I like it. It's like the Japanese colors. So like I actually went and got one of my other controllers to try and see if the controller was actually broken, and it is actually broken. And just this wave of relief came over me, because it's like I didn't want to think that my memory was that janky, where I was like, I remember these controls being fairly tight and fairly okay. And so like I was like, oh, thank God, it is actually the controller's fault. And of course it happened in a game that's not 2 players, so it's not like I'm sitting there with my friend being like, no, my controller's broken, this bull crap.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, like, because I'm sure that you were like it is always refreshing to know that your memory is not so janky, so you didn't have to like call up, Big Bird and Spider-Man, whom you played with while
regularly
during, like this game. Like, yeah, that would have been rough. Yeah, no, I didn't really have any real issues per se with the controls. Once you get used to them, they're a little bit looser than I think Mario Kart, which is what my brain immediately like projected onto this. So, like hitting right, makes you turn and slide a little bit more. But once you get used to it, that was pretty straightforward. The thing that bugged the so one of the things that bugged me, and I don't know if this is common with racing games, because I don't really play a whole lot of racing games. They're not really my jam. I think mostly because, to me, the only racing games I really like are like arcade games, when you're sitting Yeah, where you're in the car, you've got, it's got the rumble, it's got that feel to it, that really immersive feel. Like, I really enjoy that. Aside from that, I don't really care that much about cars. To me, cars are a conveyance, whatever. So that being said, so I don't know if this is common with racing games, but having cars on the course that are not cars you're racing against.
Are we going to talk about that now?
Oh, can we talk about that now? Yes. No, let's talk about that now. I hate that. I hate that so much, because every time, because one of 2 things. One is only bad, right? Because first of all, you can run into them, which is why they're there. They're there as potential obstacles. But in that case, make me race against more people than I'm racing against, because every time I would overtake one, I was like, yeah, wait, I was already in first.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So literally there was no win condition. When I entered into this, there was no way that I could come out better. I could just come out the same. And then, when like somebody would pass me, it was just, God, it was a frustrating mess. I hated it.
So I like the way we circled around on the visuals of, you are kind of like outside of the matte painting that you're seeing off in the distance, because that creates an interesting question here, which is,
where the hell are you?
Who are these people? Like, what are they doing on the course with you? Because first off, all of the non-racer cars all look identical, which really says to me, you are actually right in the middle of a city, and this is like the Honda Civic of the future, which is why you see so many of them. And it's just like
traveling at 400 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
I mean, slightly less.
Yeah. Right. But this is the thing, is it irritates me that I feel like I'm so far away from the rest of the world, and that I'm on like an officially sanctioned racetrack, and yet the presence of these freaking randos communicates the exact opposite. That you are like street racing through a populated area, and these are just other people like some moron is like going home from work, and then all these D-bags like go flying by at hundreds of kilometers an hour. And here's the thing, these are not just course obstacles. These cars are on the course because if you lap the same car often enough and you bump them aggressively enough, they will eventually explode, just like you would eventually explode, which means some idiot is going home from his friggin' job and you just like take their life.
Yeah. Good. No, actually, so I literally did go on to the Wikipedia because I do always love it when we come up with our fan theories, like what we think's going on. And there's this big game series, right? So I was just kind of like, well, maybe they already have like an in-game established mythos behind this, and I couldn't find any. So here's my theory: is that these are like like they're Running Man contestants, like they're criminals. So
this is Death Race.
Yeah. So like there's you're like the gladiator, like you're the officially sanctioned racer, but these other people are like death row criminals that they just put into cars, and like if they make it through the track, like X number of races, then they win their freedom or something like that. That's what I came up with.
I 100% accept this theory. Especially because you can tell the penal system in this Judge Dredd future is not very pro rehabilitation, because we are all in like super powered, like we're the villains in the Running Man, right? Because we have flamethrowers and buzzsaw hands, and then all of these people are in their friggin' Honda Civics, right?
No, we are District 1, and these are the districts 4 through 12, like. Yeah, no, that's what I was able to come up with, because I had to come up with something for why these frustrating, like people. I was like, why do you even bother to come like this, man? Like.
Yeah, no, I used the phrase every time I blew one up. I often found myself using the phrase like, I just took that guy's life so I could win this race. And I don't know who they were. I don't know what their story was, but I got first, so I don't care. And like, that's a weird, right? Because there are lots of modern street racing games where there are like regular pedestrians on the road. And like, if you crash into them or something, the people who are watching your illegal street race are like, oh, and it's like a part of the world, right? It's like a Too Fast, Too Furious kind of thing. But this feels like you are doing future NASCAR, and yet there are unsanctioned vehicles. So I really have now fully bought into this is actually future Death Race, and these are criminals trying to buy time off their sentences.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm unfortunately I don't really get the Too Fast, Too Furious reference. I never really got into that series, mostly because I didn't
racing.
Yeah, well, I never watched the first one, and I didn't think I could watch any of the others because of the highly cerebral storyline.
Oh yeah,
that clearly
if you don't watch
series.
them from the beginning in order, you will never be able to keep up with what's going on.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I naturally assumed that a submarine breaking out of the ice while people are, driving on it would make sense had I only know the lead-in.
Had you but known, yeah.
So the other thing that I absolutely want to make sure that we touch on during game mechanics and all that sort of stuff is the just impressive strength and durability of the rubber made to use the rubber to create the rubber band physics in this was impressive. I mean, that is that's American made,
and they have an abundance of this rubber because they've also made all of the cars and walls out of this rubber. Because if you dare to touch one of those other cars or walls, you just go pinballing all over the damn course.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, like it is impressive with how punishing that is, and then the fact it seemed like, because I played it on beginner because I was like, I'm not looking for a challenge here.
let's all be real.
Yeah, I want to play this game. Like the degree to which literally how few mistakes I was able, how long I could perform well, and then how few mistakes I could make before all of a sudden I was overtaken. Like that was I was always kind of to the point where I thought it was frustrating because and even still, like if I screwed up really, really bad and then got put into sixth, how long it would take me to get back into, whatever first, you know, like it would normally, but even still, like there was, to their credit, there was no point from my point of view where the race was completely lost, you know?
Yeah, because the rubber band physics does seem to. You ever see the movie Heart and Souls? Early
Maybe?
Robert Downey Jr. movie. It's a fantastic rom com, early '90s.
No, I've not seen Heart or Souls, or Heart and Souls.
So the thing about Heart and Souls is all these people die and their souls get like locked on to Robert Downey Jr.'s character, and he has to help them like finish their business before they can go into the afterlife. And
so it's like The Sixth Sense, but a rom-com?
yes. Yeah, I mean, I never thought about it that way, but that's the only way I'm ever going to think about it again. But they show you very early, just to let you know what the rules of the universe are, is that they can't get more than like 20 or 30 feet away from him. Right. And where, to the point where like he goes running off and like they literally just get dragged like through walls and like, cause they're ghosts. Right. So they get dragged in a straight line in his direction. And I felt like F-Zero did that kind of rubber banding where you can't create an insurmountable lead, but neither can they. Like you almost always can recover within reason, but you can almost always recover from these catastrophic mistakes where you feel like, oh my God, I was sent colliding with the wall and then into this other car and then back into the wall and I'm facing the wrong direction now and everything has gone south. But at least on beginner, because I also only played on beginner, because come on. But at least on beginner, I never felt like, oh, I might as well just restart the course. And I like that feeling. I like feeling like I should continue playing your game.
That's true, but and I myself, to wax philosophical here for a moment, have espoused the idea that there is no difference between a perfect illusion and reality.
It's
right?
true. Yes, we have spoken about this.
Yes, we have. But the problem is imperfect illusions, right? So if this was a perfect illusion where like I felt that, you know, I made a mistake, but through my own grit and integrity and ability to like pull through, I managed to, you know, pull up, or that, you know, like even though I was, you know, behaving with aplomb, you know, like this other racer was just on my heels the entire time because of their skill and wherewithal, that'd be fine. But that's not the case in my experience. I would love it if that were true, but that ain't the truth. The truth is they're the weak and I'm the tyranny of evil racers. But I'm trying, Lions. I'm trying real hard to be Captain Falcon. So
That's strong work. Truly excellent podcasting.
So all that being said, like I felt like, and that's why I said, you know, at one point where what lap are you on? I don't care. It doesn't matter. It just, what matters is that I can't make, it doesn't matter whether it's the first lap or the last lap. I can't make 3 mistakes in a row ever. You know, like if I make 3 mistakes in a row, I'm going to be in 6th place, and then it might matter, you know. But aside from that, that guy is going to be right on my heels when I cross the finish line, so I can make 0 mistakes in the last 30 seconds. That's about it, you know. And it actually reminded me a little bit of something that we see actually commonly in video games, in first-person shooters. They have similar mechanics, right? Which is you can only get shot so hard for so long before you die, right? There is no health, right? Which would be the equivalent.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So it's a similar mechanic, but I think that the difference though is that it's the number of mistakes you're able to make and how quickly you can like interim recover from them. So if I make it's like in D&D, if I make an objectively stupid if a player makes an objectively stupid decision, I will punish them for that. But if they're playing the game well and just the dice are against them, I'll like mulligan stuff towards in their favor, right? But if all of a sudden like a turn comes out of nowhere because again the visuals aren't good enough to let you know where turns are coming, so you slam into 15 walls and now all of a sudden you're in 6th place, I don't feel like I did anything wrong. So that would be like me stealthily walking into an area and all of a sudden 15 mobs descending upon me, all of them unloading their clips into me and me dying, right?
Yeah,
you know, like that's not how those games work, and that's not how this game should work. You know?
I mean, again, like reaching and trying to defend them a little bit, like that's a way that they communicate to you that success comes through memorizing the course, right? Success does not come through being a better driver, because we can make the computer drivers every bit as good as you, and we control the universe. We can make them phase through walls and appear in front of you if we wanted to, right? So like the designers are, I don't think maliciously, but are very intentionally communicating to you every race is going to feel like a nail biter. Like, we have intentionally written the game engine, and I think this is true of racing games in general, and especially true of kart racing games, where they're like, we have written the game engine so that every race, no matter how good or bad you are as a player, will feel like a nail biter. You either just barely won, or you just barely came in second or third, or you're so catastrophically bad that you just took last, right? But they want you to get that like nail biter feeling as often as possible. And if you are down for like, yeah, I'm just here to memorize the track, I don't care if I win by half a second or half a mile, like I'm here to basically play against myself, then you're okay. In a world where that's true and it's always going to be a nail biter, and you are trying to improve as a player and you want to see that improvement through a bigger and bigger lead, it's never going to happen, because they control the universe and they have decided every race is going to be a nail biter.
Right. And that's the thing, though, is that I think that it's kind of like, I guess, more like modern storytelling versus Greek storytelling, where it's kind of like, is every race a nail biter because, that's just the intensity of the world that we live in? Or is every race a nail biter because gods come in and make sure that that's the case because they're bored? Yeah. Like, that's the thing, is that if I felt that, every race was a nail biter because, like they put in obstacles that, get more intense over time, like if maybe, I don't know, like let's just say, for example, let's say you halved the number of courses, right? But what you did instead was on the last 2 laps, right? Like that's when they say like time to crank this up to 11, and they like change it so that way there are additional obstacles, right? Or they say like multi-ball and they send in all of the convicts all at once, like like something to actually increase the difficulty, so that way then that would occlude the fact that they've tightened up that rubber band towards the end, and said like, actually we added these to kind of like obscure the fact that realistically we've taken some of your agency away from you, in the same way that games that are truly like choose your own adventure, no, they're not, like all of
they're not. No one has free will. We're all just atoms.
We're all gonna die. It's all physics. It's hard determinism. But no, I mean, like all of the branches come back. Otherwise, like literally from the first decision you make, they'd have to make 2 games. They'd have to make like 30 different games, 50, 100 different games, right? So these branching trees come back, but they do make you feel like these decisions that you're making are meaningful, right? And they do that by like very rarely lifting the veil and realizing that like, well, dialogue options A, B, and C actually all lead to the same very well crafted response that makes sense regardless of any of those 3 that you chose, right? So it doesn't break that immersion. It is a perfect illusion, right? Whereas this is very imperfect. And if they just like, and it's weird to push for this, but I'm like, please obscure this illusion more so I can't see through it, because then I would find it more satisfying.
Yeah, or remove it and let me, once I'm good enough, finish with like a 40-second lead, right? Or because
exactly.
they could build in to a kart style racing game, instead of doing it through rubber band physics, they could like have a more granular difficulty curve. So like instead of 3, beginner, intermediate, and expert, you have like a 10-point scale. And they could even, if they wanted to get clever, interject and be like, every time you win with like a 30-second lead or like a half lap lead, we are going to ratchet up the difficulty, and we're going to continue to do that until you don't take first anymore, right? And like there are other ways you could build that in, but I don't personally find the rubber band physics satisfying, because it's the game reminding you that they're the game, right? They're the authority.
Right. You don't have agency.
They make all the rules, and no matter how good you are, every race is going to be a nail biter. And then it's like, well, I might as well just only do practice courses just for time, because every race is going to be a nail biter.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, even if they did something like kind of interesting, like if you finish the course with, like you said, like a 30-second lead or a half-lap lead, right? Just interjecting a singular cutscene, of like Captain Falcon, like walking up to your racer, your car, whatever, and saying like, hey, you're too good for this course. I'm coming for you now. And then ratcheting the hell out of the rubber band physics with that particular vehicle, and then you're like, oh no, like that now he's after me. He's out to get me. And even though like it's very clear that they're tightening up those rubber band physics, just adding that narrative in is like, no, it's not that they're just doing this to make sure that it's a nail biter. They're doing it because he's out to get me in particular.
Make the
like
veil thicker.
Yeah, exactly. Just do some things. That way I can't obviously see like, oh, well, none of my decisions matter. We're all like, this is all meaningless. We all turn to dust, like all of that good stuff. What else do you have?
There's a few other things that I was like, oh, this is like a weird mechanic. This is like an odd thing that they bothered to include, but I'm tired. I'm so tired. So I guess I'm kind of curious because you didn't play this game. Like, how did this, knowing the time in history this is from, having played lots of other kart style racing games, like, how'd this hold up for you?
And again, all the cards on the table. I do not know why in particular this game really rubbed me the wrong way. And I really tried to divorce myself from that because the degree to which I was finding myself frustrated with was not proportionate to the degree to which it should be frustrating. All of that being said, no, it doesn't hold up. And the thing is that, and I'm not a huge fan of racing games, but honestly, play Mario Kart, either play Mario Kart, or if the real thing that you want is something that's not, like that it's super fast, quote unquote, because, it's not actually that much faster. It's just that they have a bigger number on the screen, which makes it feel faster, but whatever. If you want something like that, you really should play a more modern, more immersive game, even just a game later in the series. Cause I did look up some of like the other games in F-Zero, and there's a whole bunch of it, and they like play one of those. I would not recommend going back and playing this. The only so for the question of should you have nostalgia goggles to play it, yes, because I think that would be very, very helpful, because if you have nostalgia goggles, chances are you remember some of the courses, and that'll take a lot of the edge off. But if somebody's just kind of like, hey man, I just want to play this game for beginners, it's like, oh, did you not stop by the Ray-Ban store and pick up those nice thick nostalgia goggles? I would probably rent a different game.
Is that hashtag sponsored by Ray-Ban? Oh my God, I would love it if Ray-Ban would make and send to us some nostalgia goggles. That would be fine. If you're listening, Ray-Ban executives.
Yeah, please send us free stuff. Yeah, I take Oakley's too.
Yeah, no, I'm not a jerk. I mean, nothing else. Like, I don't want.
Unless Ray-Ban's listening, then in which case I hate Oakley and only Ray-Ban.
Unless only Oakley's. Oh no, this whole thing is falling apart.
You're done.
Yeah, so my nostalgia goggles for this were pretty thick. This is a high prescription nostalgia goggles, and that bore out, right? The fact that I had like only cloudy memories of playing this as a rather young kid, like early in my games literacy, also not being huge into driving games, but I do like kart racing games. Like, I'm a big Mario Karter, right? And there's been some other good kart racing games. Not a lot though, mostly Mario Kart. But I kind of sat down to this, and once I figured out my controller was broken, like that left me with like a weird taste in my mouth, and I was like, oh, okay, right? It's like I put the nostalgia goggles on, but like didn't take them out of the case. So I'm like, I can't see anything. Oh, okay. So that like first impression was so tinted awkwardly, and then just like all these little weird decisions, like I can't play it 2-player, and like the rubber band physics are so egregious, and the graphics are like kind of nauseating, and there's actually some spots where like I would swear to God that the car is sliding sideways, even though I'm not touching a direction on the D-pad at all. So like, if I had to rank this game, I would give it an F-Zero.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the end of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. At the end of it all, gamers play what we play. Not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is sad, but who cares? We all know that that's not what you came for. Your next adventure's already in sight. You're all set to go. You're excited to see what's all wrong till it's right, and the world is saved. So you're more along for the ride. You're more along for the ride. You're more along for the ride. You're more along for the
I feel that we should retool the tagline to this, which is F-Zero, F this a lot.
That was good. That was good.